Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode of Real Recovery Talk. In this episode, we have Benjamin B. He's coming on and he is talking about spirituality. Spirituality is something that a lot of times people struggle with when they're getting sober for the first time, the fifth time, the 20th time. All in all, it's always a topic of discussion when people are getting sober because having a concept of a higher power could be a difficult thing for you. So if you've ever questioned that or how it integrates in recovery and sobriety, this is going to be a good episode for you. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Of course, share this episode with anybody that you think it may benefit. And also, if you're watching on or listening on the podcast app, thank you for that as well. Leave us some reviews. And in the end, you can always email us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. Thank you. Enjoy the show.
Good morning. What's happening, everybody? Ben here with Real Recovery Talk. So I wanted to touch on a topic this morning that has been brought up several times in the past couple weeks. I keep seeing all these patterns come up, and it really gave me the motivation to bring this up today and cover it. One of the things that I get asked about a lot, whether it's in meetings, whether it's in treatment, doesn't matter, is the spirituality side of the program. Now, let me make it really clear that when coming into recovery, one of the things that gets pushed a lot is spirituality, finding a power greater than yourself, where there's so many misconceptions and we have this preconceived notion of what we, a lot of times from childhood, believe God to be. Now, with that being said, I'm not here to tell anybody what to believe in exactly. I'm just saying believe, and that's a big, big part of this program. When we come in here, we feel completely broken, beaten to our knees by our addiction. And at the end of the day, one of the things that my sponsor asked me, he's like, Ben, is it going to take a miracle for you to stay sober? And I'm like, absolutely, it's going to take a freaking miracle. A guy like me, and he just looks at me and says, well, where are you going to get a miracle from? And I want to preface, I was a guy that came into early recovery. I didn't want anything to do with God, spirituality, because the way that I heard that, if there was a God, he certainly hadn't done anything for me. Look at my life. It has been destroyed. I had a resentment, if you will. A lot of people come in here not believing in a higher power or God whatsoever. What I want to emphasize is having an open mind and coming into recovery with this idea that we can formulate and through our experience, our own beliefs and what works for us. So, with that being said, going back to this miracle thing, one of the questions I was getting all the time this past couple of weeks is Ben, I'm having a really hard time defining what my higher power is. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what to pick. And at the end of the day, I want to tell people, you don't have to be able to describe a higher power. And I tell people, we're not looking for a description. We're looking for a feeling. For example, yesterday I was sitting down with a group of guys. We were doing a little big book study over at one of our houses for Rock. And just the feeling in that room of 6 men sitting together, having an intimate conversation about these topics, getting to know each other on a level that other people don't. I'm like, do you not have a feeling in your heart right now? Do you not occasionally get goosebumps? That's what we're looking for. For me, and this is just me, I can't help but deny that there's some sort of power going on there. Well, so this idea that I have to describe or be able to give characteristics to a God or a higher power is, in my perception, absolutely false. Some people may believe that. You may come in with strong religious convictions, and I encourage people, run with that. But if you're one of those people that struggle with this, understand the idea that I'll ask the clients a lot of times, or my sponsees, how large is the universe? And people have a tendency to say they can't even comprehend that. My point is if God is all-powerful, if a higher power is all-powerful, then how could our little 3-pound brain even comprehend such a power anyway? The fact that we're trying to figure it out using our intellect is what gets in our way. Coming into the program, we need to dumb it down a little bit. One of the simplest examples, they refer to alcohol as spirits, right? You got the big neon sign at the liquor store says spirits. What am I doing when I take a drink? I'm filling my body with spirit. So if you look at the word spiritual, I like to break it down for my guys Spirit rituals. What rituals are you partaking in on a daily basis to fill your spirit, fill your positive vibes, the good karma, the love, And what it comes down to is a lot of times my recovery, actually all the time, has been 20/20 hindsight, where I'm going through this process, whether it's with the therapist, treatment center recommendations, going through 12 steps, whatever the case may be. I have to take action first. 20/20 hindsight, I don't realize till hours, days, weeks, sometimes years down the line what was actually occurring. So this idea, another thing that my sponsor had asked me, he said, he brought up love. He said, Ben, name somebody that you love. And I said, well, I love my son. He said, prove it to me. And I'm like, well, I get him gifts for Christmas. I do nice things for him. I tell him I love him every day. I provide a roof over his head, etc. He's like, well, you can do that for anybody, regardless of whether you love them or not. You can do it out of ill motive to make somebody think that you like them. His point was there's no material, physical way for me to prove my love for my son. And he looked me dead in the eye and says, you don't love your son. I'm like, what do you mean? Yes, I do. He's like, no, you don't. And he was just messing with me, but his point was there was literally no way through action that I could prove that I love my son to him. But yet he was never going to be able to convince me that I didn't love my son. I know that in my heart, in my soul. Point is if you look at it, without any physical evidence or proof, I have this conviction of love for my son. My point is if I can have love for other people, in this case being my son, without any evidence or proof, is it very possible that without evidence or proof that there could be some kind of higher power, some sort of energy, spirit of the universe, whatever you want to call it? Another thing that he hit me with was, I was one of those guys, I was kind of a smart aleck, and wanted to be difficult. And I'm like, well, go ahead and prove to me that there is a God then, And he would turn around and say, Ben, can you prove to me there is no God? And a lot of times the response is when I utilize that same verbiage is, my sponsees will tell me I'm 99.9% sure that there is no God. And I say, so there's 0.1% that there is? That's enough to partake in this program, And part of that big book study yesterday, I want to give credit to Eric, the guy that was running it. I was just sitting in on it. But his point, too, was if you look at like the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, Bill W., Dr. Bob, the founder and co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, they were devout Christians. I mean, they through and through. But at the end of the day, they made it an absolute point to leave that out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and left it open to interpretation. The reason being is we're not here to tell somebody what they have to believe in. We're just telling them to believe that there's a chance there could be something and to go ahead and take that action, right? So again, going back to that 20/20 hindsight, that's all about the suggestions we take. And a guy like me, somebody coming out of active addictions, a guy that's hard from the streets, is basically saying, if you're going to ask me to do something, I want to know what I'm going to get from it, right? Well, I want to know what the end result is going to be. And my sponsor just looked at me and said, if you do this, Ben, I know what happened to me. I don't know what's going to happen to you. My sponsor in particular did not pretend to know what the result for me was going to be. But he highly encouraged me to take these suggestions and do this work. And over the course of time, and it changes every day and my understanding changes every day, I developed an understanding of my own higher power. And just to kind of simplify it a little bit too, a lot of people ask, what's the difference between your will and God's will, and how can you tell the difference? Because a lot of times therapists, sponsors, whoever, they'll say to somebody, oh, so-and-so, you're taking your will back and you're going to run yourself into the ground and take another drink or put another needle in your arm. Well, what does that mean? Like, point is, how do I differentiate between my will and God's will? There's a couple acronyms that we use that are not official AA literature terminology, so to speak, but the GOD, group of drunks, GOD, good orderly direction. What we're looking for is the design for living, right? So if I show up to a treatment center, a lot of these groups, I'm sitting with a bunch of other drug addicts and alcoholics, and getting their feedback. Let's say that I have an idea, like, oh, I've got a problem. Here's how I need to address the problem. I inform the group, and all of a sudden they shoot me feedback that my thinking sounds somewhat insane sometimes, but maybe it's a little off. And they come back around with their experience and knowledge, and they tell me, hey, Ben, man, we see what you're saying. However, we kindly disagree with you, and we think you should take another route of action. Generally speaking, prayer is a big part of recovery, and how do I know if I'm praying to myself or if I'm praying my higher power? Because if I pray, I start talking to myself enough, I begin to think that God is up here in my head, and I can't differentiate the two, right? Oh, this is what God wanted me to do. How do I know that? I bounce it off of people who I know care about me, who I know have experience, and I get their feedback, right? So those people that have more experience, more sobriety time than I do, and sometimes, well, I won't say sometimes, almost all the time, newcomers are capable of the exact same thing. My sponsor pointed out to me, we are able to look at other people's problems and hear them out and have a solution to their problems, but we struggle so much with our own. Goes back to that old adage, you can't spot self-deception by yourself. And my sponsor said to me, he's like, Ben, best way to get out of your shit is to jump into somebody else's. The thing is, too, is when I do that, when I start giving other people suggestions on how to handle problems, issues in their life, I can reflect back and say, would I give myself the same advice? So it's funny, by doing service work, Tom just recently, I think today or yesterday, released a mini episode on the importance of service work. A lot of times you'll hear people say, and I disagree with this, quit taking other people's inventory. I say take other people's inventory all day long, because guess what? If you spot it, you got it. So point is coming into this program, just have an open mind. Nobody's telling you what to believe in specifically. Just have a belief that somehow some sort of miracle can occur for you. Because if you felt anything like I did, I'm a guy that put a needle in my arm 50 times a day, and no matter how bad I wanted to stop and stay stopped, I was completely incapable. Somewhere along the line, a miracle occurred. And I truly believe, God intervened. It might not have been how I wanted on that day. Going back to what I was saying earlier, if there was a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me. Who am I to say I need help and then say what that help needs to look like? Sometimes God intervenes in the way of handcuffs, landing in detox, my parents cutting me off, no longer have a roof over my head. That's God intervening. It might not look how I want, but it's probably what I need. And thank God that God doesn't give me what I want all the time and gives me what I need, because if I got what I wanted, I would surely be doomed, because I'm a selfish, self-centered person at heart, and that's what we need help with in this program, is differentiating that true from the false and my motives, right? So I'll leave you all with this, where I got hung up with the whole spirituality of the program thing. In the back of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a section called Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience. And it says that we need a personality change sufficient to overcome our alcoholism, right? So my sponsor basically looked at me and said, Ben, you don't have a drinking problem, you have a personality problem, dude. And all I had to do was have some willingness to work on my personality and not be such a jerk, respond, not react to life situations. I reiterate, respond, not react. And all of a sudden, life started going a little easier. My conflict lessened, my relationships got better, my personal relationships, intimate relationships, family relationships, work relationships, etc. When that stuff starts to happen, when I work on my personality and I get out of my own way and stop trying to use my intellect and my own thinking, which got me to the seat that I'm in today, in trouble, things tend to go on a better course. So if you're somebody that struggles with a higher power, just know you don't have to have any sort of specific belief description of what your God or higher power is going to be, because chances are, well, in my opinion, it's a fact, you'll never truly figure that out. I mean, if you look at religion, for instance, how many versions of the Bible are there, right? nowadays. There's all these different interpretations, the way people read into it. Same God, different interpretations. With that being said, like, you can come in here, just have the willingness, the honesty, the open-mindedness. They call that the who of the program. Willingness, honesty, open-mindedness. You come in with those, they're indispensable. You have a really, really good chance of staying sober. Don't be closed-minded to the spirituality side of the program, because chances are you might not understand what that means. And with further knowledge and people to bring you through that, you'll be amazed at what miracles can occur. So I'll leave you all with this. If no one told you they love you today, I do.